Board. So you may get a message that says the session is being recorded. If you agree to that, please stay on and say okay to that message. But let us get started. I can see a couple people. I appreciate that. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen, if you know you have your camera on. So I'm looking at Bev and Betsy and Mary Alice. Yes, thank you. So now I know you all can see the screen. And I see you all putting where you're from in the chat. I'm not sure if you need to do that, but if that's a thing that happens at Wisconsin Council, don't let me stop that from happening. I am going to get started since we have a very tight agenda. This is a part one and a part two. And let me say this before I get started. My part one and part two is a very condensed version of a 2-day curriculum. And so what I normally do for people in 2 hours, I am so graciously trying to make impactful for you all in just 2 hours. So 2 days turning into 2 hours. And so I would love to be mindful of your time. And so I am going to get started. Just a friendly reminder to cut your camera off. This little beep is going to drive me crazy. But let me keep letting people in. So I'm trying to multitask right now, letting people in and facilitating this conversation. Welcome to day 2 of your Wisconsin CASA conference. I am Kanisha Phelps, your facilitator for today. I am excited to be here with you today. I have done one other thing for this organization, and it has quite frankly grown into an organization that I really, really respect and admire. And I really appreciate that you are here today with me in this session. So the session you signed up for today and that you're attending is Cultural Humility. Cultural humility is one of my favorite things to talk about because it really taps into people's identity. And so when we think about identity, this topic of cultural humility is very important. And so let's get started with our limited time. Who is talking to you today? I am. Just a couple of things about me. One, how do I identify? I'm a mother, I am a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a best friend. I'm the crazy friend who cusses all the time, the people have to say stop cussing all the time. I'm pro-Black, but anti-nothing. Pro-Black, very so meaning that I choose to support businesses that are in Black communities, but I am anti-nothing. So sometimes when you say pro-Black, people get turned off. And it's like, no, I'm not anti-anything. I just choose to support. I believe myself to be funny, which means you have to laugh at all of my jokes today. I'm also a leader. So the organization that I work for is the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Milwaukee. I am the Director of Learning and Talent Development, Talent Management, as well as their DEI Director, which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion position. I also lead informally. I lead in my house. I run this whole operation going on here. I've got 5 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, a husband, and an ex-husband who still needs all my help. And then I also am referred to in the community as the den mother. And that means in my group of friends, I am a leader because I'm the one who plans the trip. I am the one who tells us what the agenda is. And so everyone refers to me as the den mother. And so I lead in that way as well. I'm also an owner. I own dump trucks. So I have my own dump truck organization. I always make a joke. My husband thinks he's going to leave me one day. I'm going to have a little money stored away from my own business. Rick, I'm going to ask you to mute. I'll mute you there. Friendly reminder again to mute yourself. I also own properties in the Milwaukee area. I own this organization that I'm coming to you as today, Cake and All Inc., where I do lots of DEI and leadership consulting and learning opportunities for people. My interests are truth-telling, motivating people. I hope you feel after our 2 days together, I hope you feel motivated to do something. And I consider myself a seed planter. So I don't like to say that I'm just going to train you up and teach you all these things. I'm really here to just encourage you, to motivate you, hopefully inspire you. I'm planting seeds knowledge and hoping that you take those seeds of knowledge and do something with them. My passions are equity, racial justice, our youth, as I feel like your passion is the youth as well, human decency, and I'm very much passionate about healing and allowing people to show up in this world as themselves and be healed and whole. My leisures include a good nap. I've never met a nap I don't like. Happy hours that consist of cocktails and coffee. I'm an avid coffee drinker. I say that also to let you know I am on coffee number 2, which means that you all are safe with me in this space today. So let us get started. Before we take this journey together, I just want to introduce some agreements. And so hoping that we can agree that in this space together, that you would listen as if the speaker is wise. And no, that doesn't mean listen to everything I say, I know everything. It means that at any point, if anyone on the call is sharing, that we listen to them as if they're wise about their own story, that you would get to say what is important to you, and that we would take whatever you say as your truth because you are the expert on your experiences, on your journey, on your life. Practice I statements when you speak. Here's an example. Most of us know what a basic I statement is. It's when I'm talking about me. I would also invite you to consider that an I statement in this session would also mean that you will not speak for entire groups of people. And so because I identify as a Black woman, I will not say, Black women, blah, blah, blah. I will speak for Kanisha. I will speak for myself. Even if I'm referencing mothers, I won't say, well, as moms, this is real, or as kids, I will speak only through my lens. So that's the I statement I'm inviting you to speak on today. There's no pressure to speak. I found out I have no capacity to do small breakout rooms. And clearly I can't force you into small groups to have conversation, but there will be opportunity for you to talk and share if you so choose. And so I know no one on this call, I can't really call people out like I like to do on any given day. Voices, thoughts, ideas, experiences are welcome in this space with me today. And then my favorite, pay attention to what moves you. Maybe I'll say something that will activate you in a very positive way. Maybe you will say, wow, Kanisha, that moved me. I feel something. I'm excited about this content. But I also would be remiss if I didn't mention that maybe something we talk about today will activate you in a way that dysregulates you. Maybe you will be confused. Maybe you will get mad at me. Maybe you will be like, why is she saying that? Or why did that person make that comment? So just to know that you can be activated in very different ways during our time today. So, but pay attention. What was it that I said or that someone else says that excites you or moves you or inspires you? But what activates you in a way that maybe you feel shame or blame or upset or unsure? Pay attention to that as well. And then agreements for me as a facilitator, we are equals in this space. Of course, I'm a little more astute in cultural humility. I'm a certified trainer in it, for Christ's sake. But that doesn't mean that I have nothing to learn from anybody else on this call. We're equals in this space. Conflict is okay. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to persuade you on any certain thing. I'm truly here to inspire you. You may leave here today and say, I guess. You may leave here today and say, that was great. Can't wait for Thursday. And you may leave here today with no thought at all until a month later where you're like, you know what? I remember in that session with that girl with the glasses who said she cusses a lot but didn't cuss enough. I remember these things. And so I'm okay with that as well. So let us jump right into our curriculum. Using the chat feature, when you think of the word culture, what comes to mind? So I'm going to pull the chat up. And also feel free to even unmute if you want to. But when you think of culture, what do you think about? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of culture? I see identity. What do you think of? So someone says, oh yeah, culture. What comes? Influences, effects and shape us, tradition, love it. So it's just thinking of the word culture, right? And our cultural humility. learning opportunity. If you hear the word culture, what are you normally thinking? The world, surroundings, good, unity. Thank you, Guadalupe. All the things that influence heritage, good. Thank you. So when we think of culture, you all are already right diversity, right on target. Oh, I like that, David and Gina, where I come from. Sometimes when I do presentations and we talk about culture, a lot of times I find that people are talking about race or ethnicity. So the immediate thing that most people say is like, oh, my culture, Black, white, or German, Polish, like people go, Jamaican, people go into race or ethnicity. So you all are right on target with what I'm thinking when I invite you to consider a very larger scope of what culture could actually be. So here are just examples of, maybe as you move forward and some of the things you already mentioned of what you think about when you hear or think of culture. So ethnic and religious groups, but also even hobbies, like cultures of people in organized sports, cultures of people who like the same things, cultures of generations of people, cultures of young people, cultures of advocates at Wisconsin CASA and volunteers, right? Cultures in very different ways. That's the start of where I'm going to ask you to think about what we say and what we mean when we say the word culture. And then I want to share some of Octavio Paz's work, who defines culture in this way. And so it's a little lengthy, but just take a moment to read what Octavio Paz says about culture. So ways of living and dying, culinary arts, dancing, courtesy and curses, festivals, rituals, punishment and reward, how we handle ghosts if we believe in them, our dreams, people who we dream about, our attitudes, culture impacts attitudes, how we feel and view people, the now, the beyond, eternity. What do you think? What's someone's reaction to Octavio Paz's way? And this is just a small clip of how Octavio Paz defines culture. Anyone? You can chat it, but maybe if someone would unmute and say, what do they feel or what sticks out to you about this way of viewing culture? This is also in this silence, it's expansive, thank you, Jim. This is also where I want to invite anyone to just cut their cameras on. I don't care if you're laying in the bed, on the beach, if you're at Burger King, in your living room with your feet up. It is so refreshing to see people. So Bev, Mary Alice, Jennifer, Rick, Michelle, I appreciate, Betsy, that your camera's on. Rachel, thank you. It's hard to just present to names in a little box on the screen. I'm dynamic. I need some energy. So I need to see you laugh at my jokes. I need to see you roll your eyes when you don't like what I'm saying. It's just an invitation, right? We know what we do with invitations. We accept them, we decline them, we pretend we never received them in the mail, so we don't have to respond to them. So you do what you, thank you, Susie, I see you too. You love the inclusives of dealing with the dead and the ghosts. It's fluid, very good. Thank you. So what exactly, right? You're coming to a culture of humility learning opportunity with me. What is culture of humility? Let's talk about it. Culture of humility could be a philosophy, but it could also be a practice. So it could be a way of life, but it could also be a skill set you choose to use in certain parts of your everyday life. So I could choose, as the DEI director of Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Milwaukee, I can choose to show up with a skill set of cultural humility as I do my job. And then I can shut that skill off when I come home and tell people how to be in my own household and what they need to do, right? I can make a choice on how I want to use cultural humility. It could emphasize the need for our personal humility. When you think of cultural humility, I really want you to think about the difference in how most of us were taught cultural competency. So what does it mean to say you are competent on someone else's culture? And again, culture going way bigger than race and ethnicity, right? All of those things we talked about. Could we really truly show up as being competent in someone else's culture? I used to work for Manpower Group in Milwaukee, and I did a lot of traveling internationally. And I remember when I first got this promotion to travel internationally, they gave me a book, and the book was called Kneel, Bow, or Shake Hands. And it was this book on how to be competent wherever you went across the globe. So it had that list of normal standards, stereotypes, assumptions about groups of people. And I remember in a certain area, I remember I bowed, because, kneel, bow, or shake hands. And it told me in this area it is customary, right? You bow. And so I remember bowing. I remember this lady said, "Why are you bowing?" Like, to be respectful. And she's like, "You don't have to bow. You don't have to bow to me. We're equal. Like I'm equal. We're equal. Like that's okay." And I remember thinking like, wow, they should rewrite a second edition to this book, because what the book was doing was not necessarily wrong, right? Because I did encounter people, I kept bowing to people anyways, but to this lady, I did not bow because she told me her truth was I didn't have to. And so it really introduced the concept of, you can't make an assumption, right? If there is another woman of color on the call, I cannot make an assumption that we are exactly the same, that our customs, that our culture is exactly the same because we look alike. If there's another mom on the call, I cannot make an assumption that you can just define us as mothers because there's multiple mothers on the call. That people have a say-so in how they show up in this world, what matters to them, what's important to them, and those aspects of their identity are what really shape culture. And so when you think about what exactly is cultural humility, it's really when you become humbly curious enough to inquire enough about someone in relationship that they can define who they are and what their identity is. It removes the need to just know everything. If I know everything, I'm using names of people I see, if I know everything about Hattie on the call, right? Then I'm basically saying, I know her, I know how she is, there's nothing else to know about her. And it might deny pieces of relationship that I could have with Hattie that could grow and expand our existing relationship if we had one, because I feel like I know all there is to know. It doesn't make space for growing with other people. I'm going to show you this quick video of what cultural humility is. Give me a thumbs up. I'll just say Hattie and Rick and Susie because I can see you. Give me a thumbs up if you hear the video.
One word to describe cultural humility for me is love, actually.
If I had to encapsulate cultural humility, or the whole concepts of cultural humility, it doesn't do it justice, but the word that I think of it is essence.
Escuchar.
Being.
You.
Opening.
Receive. Compassion.
Love.
The principles of cultural humility offer one more framework to contribute to what has got to be our ultimate goal, yes? Our ultimate goal is that there will be a sense of equity, a sense of equality, and a kind of respect that we are driving forward.
Cultural humility is a multi-dimensional concept, and certainly Melanie Tervalon and I conceptualized 3 dimensions.
The first is lifelong learning and critical self-reflection. And in that critical self-reflection, it is the understanding of how each of us, every single one of us, is a complicated, multidimensional human being. Each of us comes with our own histories and stories, our heritage. heritage, our point of view. You're looking at me now. I am very fair-skinned. When I was a little girl, my hair was blonde. My eyes are blue. People often tried to call me anything but African American. I have a history. My identity is rooted in that history. My parents gave me the knowledge of my own social identity, and my own experience in life has created that. I get to say who I am.
The second tenet, after self-reflection and ongoing lifelong learning and development, is this notion that we must mitigate the power imbalances, to recognize and mitigate the power imbalances that are inherent often in our clinician patient or clinician client or service provider community dynamics.
And then finally, the piece that I would offer that Jan and I feel people often either don't read or don't like, which is, and the institution has to model these principles as well.
An African-American nurse is caring for a middle-aged Latina woman several hours after the patient had undergone surgery. A Latino physician on a consult service approached the bedside and, noting the moaning patient, commented to the nurse that the patient appeared to be in a great deal of post-operative pain. The nurse summarily dismissed his perception, informing him that she took a course in nursing school in cross-cultural medicine and knew that Hispanic patients overexpress the pain that they're feeling. The Latino physician had a difficult time influencing the perspective of this nurse, who focused on her self-proclaimed cultural expertise.
It was curious to this Latino physician who, first of all, was Latino, not like all, in his case, not like all Mexican Americans know everything there is to know about Mexican American patients. That wasn't it, but he might have been a resource for that African American nurse in that moment that she didn't feel like she needed, again, because she had bought into this notion of competence, of cultural competence.
The distinction between cultural humility and cultural competence was that we were in a process and a relationship that had many other layers to it, and that we were less comfortable with even the term of competence, in a way that I think people understand well, and that it implies, especially for people who are providers and are trained in academia, that you are then all-knowing and all-powerful. And we felt like that was not what was happening for us as we were learning from community and understanding in a very practical way how families were coming to the hospital and feeling as if they really were not being heard from their own heritage and history, and how that impacted what they came to the hospital with that we didn't know anything about, hadn't even a clue about. For us, this is part of the humility piece of it, getting to understand that, not trying to humiliate you, not trying to make you feel bad, trying to help us all understand that life is like this, and to, in a certain sense, be really happy about not knowing.
In April of 1992, in the wake of the Los Angeles riots, following the initial not guilty verdict of the police officers accused of beating Mr. King, the Children's Hospital Oakland community was compelled to meet in a series of highly charged sessions to expose and critique our own patterns of institutional racism, injustice, and inequity. My name is Dr. Melanie Turvalon, and I am Director of Multicultural Affairs here at Children's Hospital Oakland.
I wanted to thank everybody for coming to what is a celebration for me of this year.
Jan and I had the good fortune, really, to be together in the same place when this work was evolving. Jan and I, while we're several years difference in age, are both African American women, and both raised by women who were teachers. And we come out of that, and fathers who were working men, who come out of that Southern tradition and who participated fully in the civil rights movement in the way that meant that they made sacrifices and their children made sacrifices, and they taught us about those sacrifices and raised us each in ways to understand that we were here to serve.
Just a very quick introduction of cultural humility. And as you can tell, cultural humility actually in 1991 came out of the healthcare field. So some of the curriculum is really an adaptation because it's, so people as expert was client or patient as expert. So I've adapted the curriculum so that it makes sense for us because we don't necessarily have patients and clients. And so the critical tenets of cultural humility, the one we will talk about today is the first one, critical self-reflection and lifelong learning. To first understand the ways that we identify how we show up in the world, what it means to show up in the world in the ways that we identify. What are we afforded? What are we denied because of the ways that we identify? And then to decide to learn more about other people. And so today we'll focus on critical self-reflection, the most important piece, in my opinion. And then tomorrow we'll talk about, Thursday, we'll talk about people as the experts. Do we make space for other people, for the youth that you work with? Do we make space for people to truly be the expert on their story, on their life? Community advocacy, how do we show up and work with communities, our own communities, the communities of the people that we serve and that we advocate and work for? And then do we challenge the power imbalances, thinking of power as the thing that however you are uniquely placed into this world, into the organization, do you recognize, like, do I recognize maybe the power imbalance of when I show up in places as a married woman compared to a single woman, as a two-family household compared to a one-family household, as a director in an organization versus a direct care worker in an organization? Do I pay attention to just the power that I have in certain situations? And then institutional consistency, which we'll talk about also on Thursday. Do the people match who they serve cultural wise, not race or not ethnicity? Do our experiences align? Do our beliefs align? And do we make space to understand and learn? So let's get started with the first tenet, which is critical self-reflection. You are going to need, if you truly want to participate, a piece of paper and something to write with. So I'll give you 30 seconds or so to gather up something so that you can complete the activity on the next slide with me. Now, traditionally, if we were in a longer time together, after you do the activity, I would put you, I understand people will more likely share if there's 6 other people versus I think there's 70 of us on this call. And so I am going to have you, before I even begin to explain the activity, think about, are you going to be brave enough to be that person when I say, who would like to share? If you're going to be that person, let me tell you how I define bravery. When I talk about being brave in spaces like this, I'm really asking you to risk. I don't promise safety, because I can't promise that. But I can promise a brave space, a space where someone would be willing to temporarily, not forever, temporarily risk your psychological safety to say something that may help another person. So let me explain what we're going to do on the next slide. And as a former educator, I think I left that off my intro slide. I'm a former MPS, Milwaukee Public School System teacher. I know a little something about facilitating and asking people to go and asking people to do stuff. So I have an anchor. I will give you the example before I ask you to do it. We're going to talk about just our experiences, right? So your history, your worldview, self-reflection about any pieces of our identity is a part of the next activity. Understanding what our identity brings into interactions with our family, interactions with coworkers, interactions with the youth that we serve, interactions socially in a grocery store. And then what ways do our identity bring power? Does our identity bring privilege into the actual work that you do? And we're going to complete the assignment as best as we can. So let me walk you through this, and then we're going to give you just a little bit of time to complete the activity. So I'll go through each layer, and then I'll give you an example for each layer so that you can complete it. So first, I want you to identify a piece of your identity. So remember, we went big with culture. We said it can be many, many things. So the first thing you will do is pick a layer of your culture. You could double layer things. So I could say for the activity, I'm just going to say a mom, right? I identify as a mother. It was on my first or third slide. But I could layer that, right? I could say a married mom. I could say a Black mother. I could say heterosexual mother. I could layer a funny, strict mother. Like I could layer a mother with kids from age 23 to 3. Like I could layer the identities however I choose to. I can say that the PTA loving mother. Like I could do whatever. For the example, I'll just say mother. So my anchor is I'm using my identity as a mother. So mother. The second thing you're going to do once you pick your identity, your dimension is what values, actions, messages are associated with that. So if we roll with Kanisha saying mother, I would say values, actions, and messages. I would say that probably the world looks at mothers and think nurtured, nurturing, organized, that's not me, right, organized, all knowing about their children, the best parent of the two parents, right? Emotional probably are messages and things associated with mothers. So I could do that. Then I want you to think about domination. What privileges do you have because of whatever dimension you chose? So if I go with mom, and I think of the privilege I have of being a mom, I can think of a few things. I've been married before, never met a good proposal I didn't like, but I've been married before. And when I got divorced, because I was the mother, they looked to me to decide how often do you want the kids? Do you want child support? It was all about me. That was a privilege that I had to show up in court and be looked at as the person who makes the decisions on our children. I'm also, I think about my husband and I now when we take our daughter, Ava, she's 3, when we take her to her checkup, because I make him come with me because he wanted her so bad, when I make him come with me to those appointments, it doesn't matter if Ava is sitting on my husband's lap. They are looking at me when they ask all those questions. How much milk does Ava drink? How tall is Ava? Is Ava a good eater? What things does Ava like? They don't even acknowledge his existence. And she could be sitting on his lap during the whole visit. That is a privilege I have as showing up as her mom. Then I want you to think about things that you are denied. What are you denied because of whatever identity, cultural dimension that you chose? If I use my example of mother, things that come to mind is I am denied adequate time off when my child is sick or when I have my child. I feel like I am denied social experiences with friends who just assume Kanisha cannot come because she has kids. So I will hear about this girls' trip that was planned that no one even asked me because they're like, oh, we just thought you would have the kids. Or so I'm denied social experiences with my beloved group of friends sometimes, even though I'm dead mother. I get denied going out later for an event after work with colleagues because they think because I'm a mom, I have to hurry up and get home. So they don't even ask me. So just things like that. And then vantage points. How do you see yourself? And how do you think other people see you? So this is truly personal to you. How do I see myself as a mom? I see myself as a fun mom, as a patient mom, as a cussing mom when I'm not regulated, right? How do I see myself? I see myself as a very firm but loving mom. How do other people see me? I would say other people feel like I'm extremely too strict on my kids, and yeah, so that's how I believe other people see me. So that's the activity. Are there questions before you start to think about how you will kind of decide this for yourself? So feel free to unmute or type a question in the chat if you're not sure. So you're choosing this. You're choosing, you can roll with mom like I did. You could be wife, husband, partner. You could be whatever your work type. You could be your race, your ethnicity, your gender, sexual orientation. You could be whatever you want in this activity. What we will do, it's 12:36. I have heard no questions. I'm going to cut my camera off and let you know that I'm not going to be a stalker watching you write. So you can feel free to cut your camera off if your camera is on. If you think it's creepy, like they're watching me write my answers. And then we'll just cut our cameras back on and let's just say 5 minutes. And we will hopefully have some brave souls who are willing to share what they came up. Now, just because my camera's off, I'm still here. So if you have a question, just let me know. So what are you choosing? What actions, values, and messages, are associated? What does the world say about that? What do you have? What privileges do you have because of your identity? What are you denied because of that identity? How do you see yourself? And how do you think other people choose to see you because of that identity? I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes. I hope you can't hear my dog snoring. He's in la la land underneath my desk. About 1 more minute, so 12:41. I'm going to pray the spirit moves at least 3 people to share to share out. Oh, thank you, Washukasa. I hope if that's your name, I hope I said it correctly. I hate committed microaggressions. Thank you, Kay. I got you lined up for the second person to share. So spirit moving 1 more person to share. We'll work on that 3rd person. All right, it's 12:41. Kay, no, I'm sorry. I see Washukasa. But hold on. So David and Gina, we don't all have to know you. We will get to know you though, because you can be our third person to share. So I'm going to pin so that you can see Reno, Nevada. Oh, Erica, that's your name, Erica. So Erica, if you would like to unmute, I would love to have you share.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for all you're doing here. I really appreciate what you're doing. By coincidence, I just finished an online course on radical inclusion, diversity, and equity. So I feel primed to discuss here. Anyway, the thing that I would share about myself is that I'm an immigrant. So I'm a mother of first-generation North Americans. I've lived in and visited many other countries, and I have experienced discrimination. I've been immersed in diverse cultures. So people assume then that I am worldly, that I'm rich, that I'm multilingual, or that I'm military. You know, they make a number of assumptions based on that. And if people don't see me, then they make assumptions based on my appearance, and then they exclude me from certain groups. If they don't see me, then they make reverse assumptions, which is always really interesting. So having been in minority or exceptional situations, I feel I have a firmer footing when I'm trying to stand in someone else's shoes. And so that's definitely an advantage that I gain from that. I get a kick out of catching people off balance because they make the assumptions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Kay, I have spotlighted you as well. And if you are ready to go, go for it. You're muted, Kay. No one's ever said that in 2021.
Sorry.
No,
okay. So the dimension that I chose is being a disabled woman. And with that goes the dimensions of being someone that is less than, and someone that's unable to make a difference or unable to participate in an activity or unable to speak to a topic, show up at a presentation, any of those things. I gotta get rid of my chat.
Domination. What privileges do you have?
So the only privilege I could come up with as a disabled woman is that I have a disabled parking spot. Other than that, it pretty much is not a fun deal when you have to explain yourself, when you have to constantly be willing to discuss with some and having to discuss with others that you wouldn't normally choose to do. What am I denied? I've been denied hiring because of having a disability. And I will say that mine is an invisible disability most of the time. Some of the time you can tell when I walk, but most of the time it's invisible, which is hard to explain that to people. People always say you can't do this because you're disabled, or you can't help with this project. And even if it's moving or unloading a truck, you know, I can find something small to unload. I can still be a part of the process. Don't deny me based on what you think I can and can't do. You know, let me do what I know I can and say no to what I can't.
Thank you. How do you see yourself, and how do you think other people may see you?
I think that a lot of people who don't know me, so for example, if I park at a grocery store and I get out of my car and I walk like a normal human, I get a lot of dirty looks. I've been confronted face to face. Why are you taking that spot when somebody else could need it? I just see myself as someone with, again, an invisible disability who still has much to give, and just wishes people were able to respect the disabled in general.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate you. Says David and Gina. I'm going to make an assumption it's Gina who's talking, and I don't want to assume. I'm going to just throw that out there. If you could unmute, I have spotlighted you as well.
Apparently, this is the name of our laptop. Pro, and I don't know how to change that. So, and the dimension I chose is that I was adopted when I was 6 years old. It was a positive thing in my life, both then and now, but I can see how it has affected a lot of my life. I was adopted because my mother had died and my father felt he couldn't keep us. I should say my two sisters and my brother were adopted with me. They're all younger. The people who adopted us took us all. And that is probably the greatest blessing of my life. But as a child, I was very shy. I was unsure of my place. I lived one place, the next day I lived in another state with people I didn't know. Having my sisters and my brother there made a big difference, but I learned, I think, at a very young age, and this was before adopted children got any kind of counseling whatsoever, that life is full of uncertainties. You can't count on things that were there. They're here today to be there tomorrow. And you just make your peace with that. I kind of got myself out of being shy, almost to the opposite of being too talkative. So you tell me when to stop talking, when my time is over. But I think I am still very anxious to please. I want people to like me. I do things that I think will make me likable. And for the most part, that's okay because they're good things that I'm doing. But
Gina, do you feel like there were any privileges that you had?
The privileges I have is that the family that adopted us have more material. We had a better life materially. I was able to go to college. I had a good job for many years. And there was really nothing, and not everyone who knows me knows that I was adopted. It's not like I wear a sign or tell people. I'm not ashamed of it, it just doesn't come out.
You bring up a very good point. So Gina says, not everyone who knows me knows that. It's that practice of humble inquiry, where we don't make assumptions about people. We get better at asking questions and being in relationship and community with other people. Anything else you want to share, Gina, before I wrap up?
Just that I think it's been a good and powerful thing in my life, but it's also, like you say, a secret. And sometimes I think that has an effect.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
I'm going to unpin you and ask you to mute. Thank you, which you already did. It's interesting you share that story, Gina. 2 years ago, I did something similar like this. I'm a person that if I learn something, we're going to do it at Thanksgiving. So 2 years ago, we did a similar activity like this at Thanksgiving. And my mom, so I told you all earlier that I identify as a Black woman, but I'm actually biracial. So my mom is from Heidelberg, Germany. And she was also adopted. And one of the things that she always feels like people see her as being an adopted child, and honestly, she called herself an orphan because she was adopted from an orphanage in Heidelberg, Germany. But she always says that people always, when they find out she's adopted, they feel so sorry for her. Like they just feel like, oh, I'm so sorry, somebody gave you, even though she feels like she had this amazing life in the United States with her adopted family. So that's always interesting to me. Thank you to everyone who shared. Jennifer Smith, I see your hand is up. Is that an accident, or do you want to be our final person to share? I think because her camera's off, it may have been an accident. You can unmute. I think you do want to share. Let me see, you're on your phone, so I can't direct you on how to unmute, but you are muted. But it does look like you want to share. Nope, you're still muted. While Jennifer figures out how to unmute, what would you see as a benefit in two things? One, in an activity like this with the youth that you serve, or two, an activity like this with anyone you come in contact with and have to be in community and relationship with. But even I want you to go back to the way that I introduced myself. A part of culture humility is what they call introductions of a different kind. So where we don't just come with our basic pieces of who we are, we actually expand. I told you all that I love coffee. I told you all what I'm passionate about. I told you how I identify, that I'm crazy and I cuss. Like I went all out there with stuff, and you learn more about me. Oh, Jennifer, cool. And so think about that while Jennifer makes her comment. I'm going to pin you, Jennifer.
Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Thank you for doing this, because I mean, you hear, both sides. So anyway, what do you want me to say first?
Well, within our lab, maybe I'll give you 2 minutes platform to share anything off of the cultural inventory that I just had you complete.
Okay, what I labeled myself as is retired.
Oh.
And I would say, what am I denied? I'm denied. I feel like I'm denied choices. What am I facing? I'm facing atrophy. If you know what that is just, it seems like every time, I go to the doctor, it's like, your spine looks bad, your brain is, atrophying and so, but I mean, I'm not scared by any means. It's just a process. My strengths are, I'm very faith driven. I live by the Holy Trinity. Jesus is my everything. And he's my driving force that keeps me going. And as far as, the things that I'm denied in life, I truly am at a place, even though I've had a very experienced life in regards to travel and nursing and just having personal relationships with everybody. I make everybody important.
Good. Do you feel like, how do you see yourself? Or even how do you think the world views retired humans?
How the world views me?
Yeah.
I would say as a strong, faith-driven woman.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would say, a giver.
That's good. Thank you. So I see.
I'm sorry, just loving everybody. I mean,
Oh,
that is, I live by that poem. I don't know if you've ever read it. Well, maybe I'll look it up. It's 14th century. Oh, his first name is Dante. And his last name is kind of, but it's anyway, it's the love of God, and it's how, you know, how you touch everybody.
mhm. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you sharing. All right. So in our last few moments together, what is resonating with you with regard to just we're only on ingredient one, principle one, and we're going to squeeze the other four in an hour on Thursday, if you can join me. What's resonating with you? What are you appreciating, or what are you maybe thinking differently about in regard to this? I'm going to stop my share. I see people agreeing that this could be a great, activity to do. And even if you don't want to go, this deep on the activity, consider the introductions of a different kind, like different ways to know people through introduction. And I'm hoping that this has somewhat gave you a little bit of pause. And even if you're great at building relationship, giving you a little bit of pause to what might you do differently if you get to know a little bit more about how a person feels that they show up in this world, in this space, in relationship with you as their advocate. I see great, stop making assumptions, develop the literacy to think more deeper. People think I'm amazing. This is really great feedback in the chat. I will not hold you up. Is anyone going to make a final comment about, what you're thinking about or what's resonating with you? Anyone want to just keep telling me I'm amazing? No. All right, well, that's all we have time for today. I'm gifting you back 2 more minutes into your day. You're welcome. I hope to see you all on Thursday. Enjoy the conference tomorrow. I believe it's sent out to you all. So we will talk about other ingredients tomorrow, starting with people as the expert. We'll talk about community advocacy, challenging power, and then institutional consistency. So what I want to prime you up to think about for Thursday is one of the activities we'll talk about is think about ways your identity shows up with power and privilege. And how did that feel and what transpired? And think about ways that other people's identities have used power and privilege against you. And so until I see you on Thursday, have been amazing. I'll stay on for a couple minutes. I'll stop the recording, but I will see you on Thursday. Enjoy your conference.